Hello, 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 TM24 here, and we are back with some more Marvel Snap content. Now, if you've clicked on the video, you will know what this one is about. It's about one of the best decks in the game right now, Negative Surfer. This was recently brought to my attention on one of my videos. One of you guys commented and asked me, what about this deck? I hadn't put too much time into it, but now I have, and I'm here to say, hey, this deck is awesome. So, if you've seen any of my videos, you know how this is going to work. I'm going to show you some gameplay. We're going to talk about the deck here. I'm going to go through kind of, some of your win conditions, some potential inclusions, and then I'm going to add something in here as well, some cards that are going to be hard counters to this deck to be on the lookout for to kind of help you navigate these games. But for now, let's get into some gameplay. All right, we've got Negative Surfer here. And I will say, I was definitely sleeping on this deck. So thank you to whoever commented and asked me what I thought of it. I've now given it a very thorough testing, and I can say this deck is fun, it's strong, and there's just so many ways to win that it's really hard to take this deck down. So, as you can see here, you see the list. Bast is a really nice inclusion. There's a lot of cards that we would like to hit, and even if you hit the one Sera that you maybe don't want to, ultimately not that big of a deal. So getting Bast down on one is great. Ideally, we got Zabu, but if we don't, that's okay. Going into turn 3, we're going to have options. We've got cards like Brood, Magik that can come down. Wolfsbane, Mystique, Ironheart, probably we want to hold on to, but you could play those in a pinch. In this instance, we go with Magik, and then we have Mr. Negative. That's great. We're having 7 turns in this game. Mr. Negative is going to be able to come through and really help us throughout this game. They played Electro, so they're going with some sort of a ramp deck. Jubilee comes through, another Magik comes out, and that's okay with us. Now, we're pretty much for sure having 7 turns in this game. Now it's time to get Wong down, and we see that we've got Mystique ready as well. So this is where we kind of have some options, right? If we are able to draw Iron Man, we can copy Iron Man with Mystique, or we can do what we're doing here. It's simply going Mystique early, copying our Wong, and then playing another card, playing something like Brood. As you can see, we've got a couple of on-reveal cards in our hand, Surfer, Ironheart, and Wolfsbane, so we can do some serious damage. Now, they played Iron Man into that middle location, and that's tough. That is a lot of power. I'm expecting Tribunal because that's the type of deck it looks like. So we're trying to outpower right now the middle lane and that far right lane. Chances are the left side is going to be a little bit too tough for us to reach, which is why we're going to make the play that we do here. We're just going to put Ironheart down there. Wolfsbane is going to come down on top of the Wong and Mystique lane, and then Surfer is going to come through. It hit Tribunal just like we expected, and they do get a really nice, 23, 23, 23, but as you can see here, combining Wong with Mystique and then the on-reveal cards that we have is absolutely insane. Look at Wolfsbane there, absolutely nuts. Surfer coming through, powering up all of our 3 drops. Those Broods are looking nice and healthy, and we're going to get quite an easy win. They got Iron Man doubled up, but still, we crushed them. 49, 40, 21 versus 23s across the board. Too easy. But here we go, right into the next one, right? You can see in our hand, we have Zabu, we've got Wong, we also picked up Mr. Negative as well. So again, we're going to have options going into turns 3, 4, and 5, and that's what I really like about this deck. Depending on what you're drawing, you could play the game one way, you could play it another way. In this instance, if you've got the chance to get Mr. Negative down on 3, typically I would say go ahead and do that because it's only going to benefit you. Now, in this instance, I'm a little bit sad. We drew Iron Man. If he would have held off just one more turn, we could have had the free Iron Man doubling up, but ultimately not too big of a deal. We do hit the rest of the deck, and we're getting ready here. We see Sabretooth, so we're thinking it's some sort of a destroy deck. You can see there I'm pointing to Iron Man and Mystique, or Mystique and Wong. So again, we've got those options, and we can really just kind of pick and choose how we're going to play this. You can see here, I'm trying to decide. I know I want to go for that Mr. Negative lane, and getting Brood down there is going to go a long way in doing so. They counter with just a Squirrel Girl and Venom, and now we can figure out how we're going to go about playing this game. Obviously, Iron Man would be really nice on that monster lane, but we also have Wong and Mystique ready to go. Magik is going to allow us to extend the game. In this instance, it's a little bit tough just because we kind of have limited board space, so we might not want to play her, but we have the option to if we wanted to. In this case, we are going to go Wong and Mystique, and we're going to get Magik down into the middle lane. Now, the reason we kind of flipped this was because chances are it's going to be really tough for us to compete in Monster Island. So we wanted to put some 3-drops into that middle Daily Bugle, now Limbo lane. We saw the damage that Surfer can do when Wong is copied with Mystique. So as long as we draw one more 3-drop that we can put into Limbo, it's going to be really, really tough for them to beat us. Now, in this instance, we don't hit that 3-drop right now, but we do have Iron Man, so that's a very, very solid second option. So turn 7, we're looking at Sabretooth and then Surfer. Sabretooth obviously into Limbo, Surfer obviously on Wong and Mystique to get the benefit there. So now we're just waiting, trying to figure out what our opponent is going to do here. Yes, we're way behind on Titan, but we know that Surfer's going to come through, so we feel pretty good about that. Limbo is kind of up in the air right now, but with Iron Man coming down, chances are we've won that one. Monster Island, though, feels a bit rough. They've already got 17 power there. We've only got 14 with 1 slot left, so it is going to be really tough for us to take that one. Hence why we are focusing on the other 2 locations here. So now it's just a waiting game, figuring out what they're doing, and they kind of go all in on Limbo here. Electro comes through, Sabretooth comes through, and then it's Deathlock. I don't necessarily think that was the best option for them. They are going to get a free Sabretooth out of that, but of course, Deathlock is only 5 power, and now that we've doubled up in Limbo, we feel like we've got a really good shot at winning this game. We pull Bast, which is obviously worst case scenario here, but we do have Sabretooth thanks to the location before Limbo, I believe, the Daily Bugle. So we can still power up that Sabretooth, power up our Brood and Broodlings and Magik, and those right 2 lanes are going to be the lanes that we are focusing on here. Now, we are behind in Titan, behind in Monster Island, so for them, it looks like they've got a really good shot at this. But it all depends on what they play, and they do go heavy into those lanes. Shang-Chi coming down, taking out the monster is a little bit tough, but we weren't banking on winning that lane. We're lucky that they played Death on that lane as well. It would have been tougher had they played Death into Titan, but as you can see here, we are still going to get a ton of power down. We're up at 42, 23, now 29. Obviously, Death coming down on Titan instead, it would have been a lot closer. If they would have played Sabretooth and Death, they would have won, but ultimately, we end up getting that win. So it feels really, really nice there. And then we're moving on right to this next one. As you can see, we've got Mr. Negative in hand. That's pretty good. Weird World, not ideal because we don't want to negatize our deck knowing that they will be drawing those cards. So obviously we've got Magik ready to go on 3 to get rid of that. Then we can safely go Mr. Negative on 4 and then just take the draws that we get for the last couple of turns. We do pick up their Daredevil, which is fairly nice, but they Spider Ham us, so our Iron Man is gone. Ultimately, not a huge deal, but still kind of hurts a little bit. We continue on with our play of going Magik 3 into Weird World, and then we've got Mr. Negative ready for turn 4. We're trying to figure out where to play him. Obviously, Danger Room makes the most sense, simply because we're hoping he gets sniped. Honestly, that would be great. We would love that -1 to be out of there, but not a huge deal if it's not, since it's only taking up 1 slot. Now, as you can see, we picked up not only our own Wong, but we picked up their Wong as well. And now we've got Ironheart in our hand. So turn 5 is on us. We get to see what they're doing thanks to their Daredevil. You can see I'm pointing out those Wongs. We could definitely do something crazy there. Blue Marvel coming down is not really a big deal, so we decided to go with simply Zabu. And the reason we do that is so that on 6, we can go Wong and Wong on the Strange Academy. We've got Ironheart ready to go. If we draw Mystique, we will be even happier. And we draw her right there. So again, a little bit lucky here, but we are in really, really nice shape. We are behind in Danger Room. Limbo is tied, but they have more slots open. So right now it feels like we're way behind, but this deck has a lot of comeback potential thanks to some of the combos that you can pull off. And if you've seen any of my shorts, you know I am a huge fan of combos, combo decks, and doing crazy cool things in Marvel Snap. And this deck will definitely allow you to do that. Now we do get lucky here. They played their Cosmo into that Limbo lane. If they would have played it on Strange Academy, we probably would have lost, but they didn't. So we're in good shape. We're copying those Wongs, and then it's time to get Brood down into the middle lane and Ironheart to come through and just hope that we hit the right cards on turn 7 here. So we do buff up their mojo. They're all the way up to 20 in that middle lane. They played Professor X into Strange Academy. Not quite sure what they were thinking there, but we do copy Wong. We're winning Strange Academy, so all we need to do now is come back in either Limbo or the Danger Room. And Ironheart is about to go off here. As you can see, she's just going to start pumping up the power on all of our lanes here. But really, Limbo is what we were looking for, and Limbo is what we got. And again, another big come from behind victory. Let's go. We got one more game for you here. And as you can see, again, turn 4 is a huge turn for us. In this case, turn 3. We have Zabu. We can go right into Mr. Negative or Wong. So again, it's all about options with this deck and what you want to do. Murder World is actually great for us because that allows us to play Mr. Negative into that Murder World lane and get rid of him. We're taking a little bit of time here just thinking on what we want to do, but ultimately it's fairly straightforward. Zabu's going to come down, then Mr. Negative into Weird World, and then get ready for the rest of the game and start figuring out how we want to do this. Mr. Negative comes down. They do play a couple of nice cards into Murder World, so they're going to get the buff on Deadpool, and Sabretooth is going to be free. But we both get really nice pulls in Sakaar. They get Death, and we get Sera. Sera is great for us because now all of our cards are even cheaper. Mr. Negative already came through, so really we like where we are at. But because our cards are so cheap, we can kind of hold back and kind of decide what we want to do. Now they play into Sacred Timeline, which I actually think is a really, really nice play here. They get to fill their hand with their opening hand again. So they've got some really nice cards in that hand. All we play is Magik. We just want to extend the game and start stacking some cards in our hand. You can see here, we've got options that we could play, but we don't necessarily have to play them. We're going to go just Wong and Mystique into this middle lane, and then see what we draw for the final turn. Now, the reason we wanted to play at least those two was because energy, or, in terms of cost, it could get a little bit tricky. We do lose Iron Man right there, which is a little bit tough. Not a huge deal, though, because we don't necessarily need Iron Man to win. So we copy Wong again. Turn 6 is through. We pick up Silver Surfer, and again, we have options here. We could play them right now, but we don't necessarily have to. And this is where a card like Wave could really hurt, because we want to play all these cards on our last turn. So if something like Wave came through to slow us down, we would be in trouble. We're lucky though, they don't play Wave. Instead, they play a really nice Venom into that center lane, and it's time for us to decide what we want to do. Obviously, they're trying to protect their death lane with Negasonic, but because we've got Brood, we feel kind of good just playing Brood and letting that go. Now, we probably should have played Ironheart into the Limbo lane instead, just to keep Ironheart alive. It essentially would have been the same thing, but we didn't do that. And as you can see here, we're kind of trying to decide what we want to do. We ultimately switched Brood to the far left. Ironheart comes over to the far right. The reason we did that is because those are the two lanes we're trying to win, is the Limbo and the Murder World lane. So they come through and just stack those lanes with power, but you guys have already seen what this deck can do, especially when Wong is copied with Mystique. Wolfsbane about to go off, giving us a nice easy win in Murder World. And then we've got Surfer behind to secure the dub in Limbo as well. Again, the amount of power that this deck can put out is just, it's absolutely insane. All these combos are super, super fun. So if you've got a shot at putting this deck together and playing it, I would say do it. It feels great right now. All right, so you've seen some gameplay, you've seen some crazy amounts of power that this deck can put out, and well, to be honest, that's one of the reasons I really like this list. It can put out insane amounts of power. You've got multiple win conditions, and kind of it hinges around 3 cards, and we'll go over those in a second. It makes it super flexible and really hard to counter because you do have those options. So I'm gonna throw up a graphic here, and you guys will see our win conditions. Really, the 3 that I'm seeing that are big are going to be Wong, Mr. Negative, and Sera. So some of those, of course, you can combine. If Mr. Negative comes down and it hits Wong, hey, you're feeling pretty great. But you don't necessarily need Mr. Negative to win. You don't necessarily need Wong to win. You don't necessarily need Sera to win. If you get them all, hey, congrats, you've won the game. Too easy. But if you get even just one of them, it feels like you've got a really good chance at winning that game. So obviously, Mr. Negative, he's turning all of our cards, you know, flipping the power and the cost, hitting things like Iron Man, Mystique, Ironheart, Wolfsbane, Brood, all are amazing. Now with Wong, we have ways to power up some cards. We've got Ironheart and Surfer, of course, that are going to hit all of our 3-drops and really pump up the power that we're putting out there. But we've also got Wolfsbane in this list so that we can play it right on top of that Wong lane and buff that lane as well. Because typically when you're playing Wong, that lane is probably the one that you're going to lose, so you really focus on the other ones. With the Wolfsbane, that's not necessarily the case. Now, let's say you don't hit Mr. Negative or Wong, you pick up Sera, and you can still go with all these 3-drops and get a ton of power down. So you've got multiple ways to win. Those are kind of like your 3 big cards that are going to push you towards winning those games, and kind of the win conditions there. Now, there are definitely different lists that I've seen built around Surfer and Mr. Negative, and there's some cards here that I've included that might not be bad options to include. First up is Hitmonkey. Hitmonkey makes a ton of sense, but for me, a lot of the times you're not going to hit all these, you know, they would be 0-cost cards, so fitting him in feels a little bit tough. I would rather go with Wolfsbane simply because we know we can put that on the Wong lane and get more consistent power without trying to have to, you know, figure out which cards we can play, which ones we're not going to play. Next up is Storm. I think Storm could fit really nicely into this list. Same stat line as Magik, but let's say you're not hitting Mr. Negative, you're not hitting Wong, you do see Sera on 5. Going Storm on 3, Brood on 4 is one of the strongest plays for this list. So I feel like Storm could make a really strong case to be in this list. And then finally, one of my favorite cards is Gambit. Now, you definitely need some cards in your hand, and if it's negative, chances are you aren't going to be you aren't going to have a handful of cards, but just taking out 1 or 2 may be enough to do the trick. So I like Gambit. It's a 3-cost. You could definitely power him up as well with Surfer, with Ironheart, but hey, it's another 3-drop that combined with Wong, you're feeling pretty good. Even if you're only taking out a couple things, ultimately it may just be enough to win. Now, there are definitely some cards that are going to kind of hard counter this deck. Now, there's 2 obvious ones. Cosmo, of course, because we've got a lot of on-reveal shenanigans going on, but also Enchantress because we have a lot of ongoing. Whether it's Wong, Iron Man, Mystique, Enchantress is going to eat those up. Cosmo is going to prevent things like Surfer, Wolfsbane, potentially Brood, and Ironheart from coming down. So those 2 are going to be a big problem. Now, the third card that I see as a tough counter is going to be Wave. And this is more played kind of in the later stages of the game, specifically on going into that turn 6, turn 7 if Magik is out there. Because we've got a lot of cards that we're trying to play in one turn. Wave coming down, it's going to let you only play 1. That is going to hurt our gameplay, so Wave could be really tough to deal with. Now, if they play Wave early and you can get Sera out, guess what? That's amazing. But if they see what you're doing and they hold that Wave until the end of the game, you might be in trouble. So just something to think about going into that second to last turn, getting some additional power down when maybe you would hold it back, not necessarily a bad idea. But you've seen gameplay, we've talked about the list, the win conditions, inclusions, and potential counters. If there's anything else that I missed, please feel free to throw it in the comments and I will address it. But I've had a ton of fun playing this deck. It's super strong on ladder. It's super strong on conquest. So give it a shot if you've got these cards. Additionally, if you've hung around till now would be a great time to go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, as it really does help me out. Make sure you hit the notifications as well, because I'm trying to put out content on the daily and you don't want to miss a video. The next one I'm going to be putting out is all about Galactus and quite a few ways that you can pull him off in today's meta. But until then, have some fun.